Welcome back to the ThePuckNPod. In today's jam-packed episode, we discuss the Blue Jays season, Major League Baseball playoff predictions, NHL injuries and contract impasses, as well as training camp cuts. We also introduce a brand new segment on the pod, and finally, we discuss our favorite random sports movies. That's all coming up next, right here on the ThePuckNPod. Let's puck and go! Well, gentlemen, we have one heck of a packed episode of the ThePuckNPod coming your way. What do we want to start with?
Well, I mean, it's a good time of year for sports just in general, with kind of hockey season just getting ramped up. Football started, 6-7 weeks ago?
Yep.
You've got baseball kind of heading into the postseason now. Golf's kind of at the tail end of their high season, and it's just there's so much going on. But I mean, I think really we should probably just get right into baseball. Baseball's kind of prevalent, and there's lots going on in baseball right now.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't be able to argue that. Obviously, a ton happening in regards to the playoffs coming up, and obviously teams are making changes now that the postseason's coming up for the ones that didn't make the postseason. Certainly could talk about the one and only Canadian team that we have right now, the Blue Jays.
Teams making changes, and of course, some teams not making changes.
That's true.
As so reported earlier this week.
Yeah, the Jays had a press conference yesterday that I was kind of severely disappointed with, to be honest. Like, not only was the season kind of underwhelming, it was very underwhelming, especially with the way they were projected to finish at the beginning of the year. And a few injuries took place, underwhelming hitting to start the year, and then their bullpen was just subpar, which was weird because last year they had one of the best bullpens. But what was the biggest thing you took from that press conference yesterday?
Just obviously some of the changes that they were looking to make, and the fact that they're still keeping, as we had talked earlier this week about, the fact that they're keeping certain staff around that might not have been the best decision. Like, I think there were a lot of fans last year that were clamoring for Atkins and Shapiro to be let go last year, and the fact that they're still looking to keep the same basic management group, coaching group intact, at least the main coaches. It's concerning. You want change when you see things are going kind of downwards, and it seems like it's been going downwards for the last couple of years now. And it's kind of what the Leafs have done. You're recycling the same thing over and over again a year.
So let me ask you guys a question, just from the outside looking in. You guys know I'm not a baseball fan. I think the audience knows this. We've talked about it in the past. I'm intrigued by this because my mindset goes, okay, well, what could possibly come from not making changes at all, especially with front office, the way this season went, things like that? What can you sort of take yourselves out of the fans' shoes for a second and think, like, what benefits the team here? What can possibly come from not doing anything at all?
The way you really have to look at it is that I think this is PR related the entire way anyway. So Shapiro, Atkins, which are, if you don't know, the president and the GM respectively, they basically set themselves up for the ability to do whatever the hell they want now. Whether they decide to start making changes, they've basically said, hey, you know what, we're going to stand pat, we're going to go with the program, we're going to stay with the plan, which in Leafland we've heard for 7 or 8 years now.
It's literal insanity.
Yeah. And you can see that that's probably setting them up for the ability to, you know what, hey, we are going to try to sign Juan Soto in the offseason. We are going to try and bulk up our bullpen like crazy. We are going to relook at our internal management structure and see where it goes from there. The first thing they did was what a lot of fans were calling for and have been for ages, and that's fire the hitting coach, right? Guillermo Martinez. Yeah. Which was strange. When they hired him, they were, for two, maybe even 3 seasons, they were one of the best hitting teams in the MLB. But just those little changes that I'm sure you're going to speak on it just in a minute about what they have done, but they've set themselves up in the public, in the media, to essentially now do whatever they want and maybe try to win some fans back if they do something spectacular or in the fans' eyes may be a good move, or maybe go out and finally spend some of this Rogers money, that sort of thing.
What's interesting, though, again, from my perspective, is it seems like every year, on paper, the team looks good, and then just nothing happens. Like, what are the biggest flaws that you know of that the team is currently? What's the biggest flaw that they have?
Their hitting was a major concern, obviously, this year. When you have as many players as they had, like with under 300 hitting, not that you have a ton of players on your team that's always hitting over 300, but none that were really close, except for some of the young guys they've had come up since the trade deadline, have been able to hit more consistently, but it's a shorter, smaller window of what their abilities are and whether that would work over the long term. Really, if you're looking at consistent hitting, it took Vladimir Guerrero, I believe, up until probably June this year to really start getting consistent with this hitting. And he's basically the only over 300 hitter that we had all season that had played since the beginning of the year.
Wow.
I actually think it was later than that, Paul, because I'm pretty sure it was about 2 weeks after the All-Star break.
Oh, really?
That's disappointing. I mean, in terms of relating it to a hockey sense, that would be like the equivalent of Alex Ovechkin not scoring really until later on in the season, February, right? Last year, which is exactly what happened. I can understand the frustration on a Blue Jays fan's mind.
Now, you can argue that hitting has gone down in the MLB because the pitching has gotten so good. They've really had a focus on hard-throwing pitchers with good stuff, quote-unquote, like lots of movement on their fastball, and they have a different type of spin or a different rev rate on their curveball and things like that. You can get into the Corsi and statistics and all sorts of different crap. But realistically, the pitching is so good overall these days that the hitting is generally down. So when you're talking about hitting for average, you're still these days 270, 275 is a good average in the MLB.
Absolutely.
And the Jays as a team average were not even close to that.
Wow.
So I mean, so much injuries play a factor, right? One of their best hitters from previous years, Bo Bichette, who has actually been struggling at the plate a little bit, was basically injured for 3/4 of the year. Mm-hmm. And, he didn't even get a chance to kind of break out of whatever he was going through or figure out why that he's swinging at a pitch 2 feet outside of the zone. It's one of those things that does play a factor. But, yeah, it's really hard to say what went wrong.
Well, you had to look at the emphasis on the changes that they've made over the last couple of years. Like when they traded away Teoscar for pitching help, and I put that with the parentheses. When they traded Teoscar for pitching help, and they traded obviously Gurriel and Moreno away for defense. The idea was to reduce runs, so they had reduced runs with the defense and supposedly better pitching, and they did have really good pitching staff last year. They didn't have a good pitching staff this year. You have to still be able to score runs, and the way you're going to score runs is actually getting on base. And unfortunately, the Blue Jays were not consistent at all with getting on base, as well as the fact that they couldn't score runners when they were in scoring position by getting a hit.
And on top of that, I think you also need to discuss kind of how management played a role in this season. I mean, last season too, but this season. And, I'll be honest, I was pretty stoked last year when they hired Don Mattingly. And they went through the season. I mean, there wasn't really any improvement at all. And then you thought maybe a little more impact this year, a couple of new players coming in, that he'd be able to sort of contribute a little bit more. And I mean, who knows? We don't know what goes on in the clubhouse. But I just thought an impact guy like that, the career he had hitting, and that he'd be able to contribute, even though he wasn't the hitting coach. But, Guillermo Martinez, we talked about, let go. He's just kind of, the Blue Jays hitters have just been slowly declining, and what else can you do, right? You guys know that the coach is always the first person to go because you can't get rid of all the personnel, especially not at the same time. And then you look at, even right at the top with guys like John Schneider and the way they handled the games. Like, I don't know if it's inexperience or what, but there's a lot of scrutiny with the way he's coached games. Yeah. Pulling pitchers early, putting in a certain reliever in certain times, pinch hitting or pinch running for someone in a situation you're like, what are you doing? And then it ends up completely backfiring. And multiple times this year, there were instances that you could say, like, what? And he's asked after the game, and everybody keeps putting faith in him. They ask the GM, hey, what do you think about this? And are you going to fire Schneider? And are you going to make changes? And, we're confident he's our guy, and we're going to stay with him. And I don't get it, really. I don't.
Just, like inexperience on the MLB level in terms of being like the head guy, right? Like he's been coaching for a long time, but it just seems that he hasn't quite got the knack for the major league game. Like, the Blue Jays have made obviously changes this offseason or this playoff season so far by reshuffling some of their staff, including Mattingly getting put into more of a influential role. There's lots of commentators who have said that they liked Mattingly when he was first signed, and now they're kind of saying that he's kind of almost been a negative effect on the players and the clubhouse. So it's, and really
the press conference yesterday said that he's going to get an increased role.
Yeah,
with the team. I don't know what that means, but
I think it means that the people that are saying that he's a negative effect aren't seeing the behind the scenes stuff, right? Like anything can be said about how things look or appear, but like I think in the end, he wouldn't be given a more prominent role if he wasn't making an impact.
Exactly, and ideally, from a fan's perspective, that's all you can hope for is that an impact is coming, no matter what they decide, and then go from there. But I wanted to say, speaking of managers, who is managing still in the MLB? AJ Hinch of the Detroit Tigers. What are they doing? They are on some sort of heater.
Well, they, we're talking about the Tigers and the fact that the playoffs have basically arrived. They swept the Astros in the most recent wildcard series.
There was a point in time, I saw it yesterday, there was a point in time in the season that the Detroit Tigers and the Toronto Blue Jays, had the same record at 56 and 63. And here are the Tigers now in the playoffs, going to the second round. It's just like, holy smokes, man. It shows you anything can happen, especially in baseball.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, day to day, something can change so drastically.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. We're talking about more surprises. To be honest, the Royals have been kind of a down team for the last couple of years. They just swept out the Orioles on their matchup in terms of the wild card series. And the Orioles were expected to be like a top-notch team.
You'd probably remember, Joe, I know you don't watch much of the MLB, but there was a time, especially in the AL East, where you saw teams like Tampa Bay and even the Orioles to a certain degree, but specifically Tampa Bay or the Rays, whatever they are, the Tampa Bay Rays, Devil Rays back in my day. But they were bad every year, and not bad, but like horrible. And they were horrible every year. No offense, kind of like the Arizona Coyotes or the Utah Hockey Club of the NHL.
Yeah.
In retrospect, no matter what seems to happen, they don't get any better. They don't improve. A lot of it's probably payroll. They don't have the cash to lure free agents. And when you're constantly a rebuilding team, who wants to play there, right? And I understand that. But now it's like a flipped role because Kansas City was like that the last 2 or 3 seasons, as you said, and now they've flipped just like the Orioles and Tampa Bay has the last few seasons as well.
It's a tough division, obviously, that the Blue Jays are in. It's not so tough that you can't improve, but you gotta, I don't know, maybe in their case it is a culture change at some point. Obviously, everything's kind of being kept status quo. Maybe if a proper culture change changes, like some of these other teams have done, there's a possibility of a wild card in the playoffs again in the future.
So let me ask you this. And I'm just kind of curious what you think. We'll get to the World Series in just a minute, but so we'll go through the ALCS right now. So the ALDS, which is your American League Division Series, is happening. And so you've got the Detroit Tigers and the Cleveland Guardians in a series. Who's your pick out of that?
Cleveland. Yeah, just they've had an amazing farm system in the last few years, and they've been able to start bringing those players up. They're a youthful team. While Detroit's got a Cinderella run so far, I think Cleveland's just got much more depth to move forward on that.
And I'm going to go with Detroit just because of how hot they are, and I know how much momentum plays a factor in baseball.
I've noticed that a lot. Again, looking on the outside, is momentum is a huge factor when it comes to baseball.
It really is, yeah. The other series in the American League are the Yankees and the aforementioned Royals.
The Yankees are too much of a powerhouse not to choose them.
Yeah, it sucks. I don't want to pick the Yankees, but you kind of, I think they got an edge for sure.
Soto, Judge, you got Garrett Cole on there. Like they're way too much of a powerhouse. Like those are some of the top players in the world.
Yeah. All right, moving over to the National League. the first series you had Atlanta play San Diego, and now I think I'm a little bit confused by this.
San Diego swept that series against.
They did, and the Dodgers had a bye, right?
They did, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So they're going to be in the NLDS, and Philadelphia. So, Paul, then what do you think about the Mets and the Brewers and whoever's going to win out of that playing the Phillies?
Yeah, so I got to go with the Phillies. Just, Harper, Arenado, again, just two really good superstar players. I think they got a lot more momentum to make it further than the other two teams do.
Who's your pick in the LA and San Diego?
If I had to choose between San Diego and LA, the Jays going after Ohtani this offseason. He's the best player in the world. How can you not go with that team? Like I would say they're pretty good to go on a run all the way through.
I don't know who's going to stop the Dodgers right now, and Shohei Ohtani. It's pretty insane.
In a good way.
In a very good way for the Dodgers. Sucks for everybody else in the MLB.
So does that cover baseball, gentlemen? Yes. Okay. Now I think I gotta intro this because I'm really excited about A. I'm excited about the podcast, but B. I'm excited about the fact that we are going to have our own segments of the show, and we're going to try this out for the first time on the Puck and Pod, and that is a segment we like to call "What's Buggin' Brando."
Everything is bugging me. I don't understand what's going on in the NHL right now with clean hits being fights every single time, guys headhunting in the preseason. And I'm not talking about minor league players necessarily trying to make a name for themselves. I'm talking about basically proven NHLers just going around doing whatever they choose. And on top of that, you've got players being injured a lot, star players. So now it starts to bring up is the preseason too long? So there's many things going on in the NHL, because that's our focus on this podcast for the most part, is those two things: the preseason and injuries, and the Department of Player Safety.
DOPS.
I don't know if George Peros got punched in the head too many times or not, but it's starting to become evident that he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And nothing is consistent. And I'm not talking about this as a Leafs fan. I'm talking about this across the NHL. Yeah. You're seeing inconsistency everywhere. The other night, there was an incident where the Leafs were playing Montreal. And I can talk about this because I watched the game. I know for sure this happened. And one of the Leafs forwards, Cedric Perret, who's from Quebec, by the way, playing in a preseason game, and Patrick Laine, who's a new member of the Habs, obviously, coming through as a goal scorer, a great player in the NHL, legs spread really wide. The hit is a different story. We can get into that if you like, and you guys can let me know what you think, because I am curious, and we'll get to that maybe a little bit later. But both players were kind of positionally not correct, and then Laine shifted as to try to make a move, understandable, and Perret's in a position where, okay, well, he's kind of screwed, and there's a hit, okay? Knee on knee, Laine's hurt. It's not a good look, especially in the preseason. You never want to see stuff like that happen. And so to speak, nothing really comes of that. Later in the game, number 72 for the Habs, Wi-Fi everybody calls him because nobody knows how to pronounce his last name. I believe it's Arbor Jackeye, he claims he's a tough guy. He's fought many times. He lays big hits. He plays tough. He plays hard. That's exactly what the Habs need. And he just decides to basically jump Perret. He grabs him. Perret says no thanks. And he starts basically saying, okay, well, I'm just going to start hitting you in the back of the head with my glove on.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's no good.
No.
And the other thing is that he's unsuspecting. He basically said no way. Now, we can get into it, and I'm going to a little bit, but yes, do I think Perret should have said, okay, yep, I hit your guy, I hurt him, let's have a go.
Yeah.
It's the throw a couple punches, spin around, fall down.
Yeah.
But at least have a go, right? And so there's one incident, and there was basically a fine, $3,300. That's like, what, $5 to us?
Pocket change.
Probably, yeah.
It's pocket change, right?
Yeah.
It's a Tim Hortons coffee in the morning for these guys. Even for Jackeye, who probably makes league minimum or close to.
But even then, league minimum still just under $1 million.
That's right. Now, I don't know what the rule is, but it's still bugging me, so I'm talking about it. Not really any discipline whatsoever. A lot of people thought he probably should have been suspended, whether it be one game, whatever. But probably a sign of force shown to say we're not going to stand for cheap shots and, basically mugging someone like that. Plays the next game against the Ottawa Senators. And it ends up, if you watch the replay of this play, check it out on YouTube, there was a play where Tim Stützle was trying to weave in and out, coming across the blue line, heading into the offensive zone. And Jack-Eye comes from his right D position across the ice at the blue line and goes to hit Stützle, who wasn't even heading in that direction. Jack-Eye gets his arm up. Now, it doesn't look like his head makes contact, but there's a clear sense that his intent was to hit high. And he did still hit him, and it took Stützle. Stützle's not injured, but it was a bad hit. Now, Brady Tkachuk goes and says, okay, that's no good. Grabs Jack-Eye. They both kind of drop their gloves for a second. Brady Tkachuk starts to go throwing punches, and then Jack-Eye turtles onto the ice, basically saying, don't hit me, you jumped me.
Yeah.
Maybe they're told to do that to try to take a penalty. I have no
Maybe
clue.
because it's the preseason and they don't want him to get hurt or whatever.
That's also true, but
Yeah,
it's
could be
bugging me,
coaching.
so I'm talking about
Oh,
it.
100%.
And there you go. There's another incident where there was an opportunity for a fine or a suspension. 2 games in a row for this guy, who, as I mentioned, a lot of people would argue that maybe he shouldn't even have been playing in that game. 2 games in a row, and the second one might have even been worse than the first, the way that hit was displayed. There was, in my opinion, it was kind of an intent to injure, the way he came up
It
high
sure
with
looked
that
like
hit.
it.
Especially when Stützle is a pretty small guy.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. Another inconsistency with DOPS, no suspension, not even a fine on that, basically nothing. He was given a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for that. And he might have even got 2 minutes for elbowing.
Well, and I think in that case, too, I think the league has to look at it when they're given a game misconduct. I believe that's like a thing. They have to look at it. So my question is, based on that, is what is the league seeing that we are not in the replays we're looking at?
It's confusing, and that's why I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear anybody's comments. Leave a comment on the podcast below and just let us know what you think, or if you have any questions, because I'm kind of feeling the same way. And then the last thing I'll mention, that's all kind of happened within the last 3 days. Last night, the Tampa Bay Lightning were playing the Florida Panthers, and there was a point where there was a hit on Victor Hedman, who is the now captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning, probably one of their best players, if not their best player. Kucherov's up there. And it was a clean hit by a player who was a lot smaller than Hedman. Right to the chest, textbook. Hedman gets bowled over by a little guy. And Nikita Kucherov right then kind of grabs the Florida player, his name is Davies, by the back of the jersey and kind of starts flailing him around, doesn't really throw any punches. But so Tampa Bay takes a penalty for that, and Florida scores on that power play. Okay, you think justice is served, right? The next shift, I think, that Davies was out on the ice, Connor Geekie, who was the 22nd pick overall, I believe, a couple of years ago, has a legal line change, comes onto the ice because it was his play, but he went and immediately seeked out Davies and started instigating and started fighting.
Right.
And basically doing the same thing I would say that Jack-Eye did, except that it was to his face, and Davies was a little bit more willing to participate. But there's another opportunity for DOPS to step in. So they do, and he did get suspended 1 game. That happened today. 1 game, though. Now, I guess because it was a legal line change, they determined that starting an altercation on a line change was acceptable enough that he only got 1 game.
Yeah.
But still breaking the... I don't know. It's so confusing.
It's definitely frustrating because, like, I'm with you in terms of like the fact that bugs me as well. The thing that bugs me the most about, though, is the fact that there's inconsistency with how they determine whether something is disciplinable. And like, you think about playoffs are a completely different beast compared to the regular season and compared to preseason. But these are people's careers at stake. People are getting injured in preseason. People are getting like majorly injured in preseason, and you're thinking like, I look at the Jack Eye hit, for example, on Stützle, and I'm like, that's got to be at least a game, right? Whether he hit him in the head or not, that was intent to injure. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. And it's preseason, so are they looking at that and going, well, he's got some time to heal and blah, blah. Like, no, it doesn't matter. No. You know?
Why is Jack Eye even doing that?
Exactly. Why are we playing this kind of hockey in preseason?
We're not talking about a guy who's not in the NHL.
Yeah. It's crazy.
You talk about consistency. Like, I remember reading an article back in March, and it was on the Department of Player Safety and George Parros, and Daniel Briere, the GM of the Flyers, had spent some time with the Department of Player Safety, and they had talked about, especially Parros talked about consistency is their main course of action. Basically, that they try to be as, I guess, even as he says that he can be. But the results just don't show that. The consistency seems to be very favoritism based. I don't know how to explain it. It seems that maybe I'm conjecturing on this, if Parros seems to not like a certain team or individual, he's maybe a little harsher on them than, say, certain other individuals.
Yeah, it definitely comes across that way. Whether it's true or not is a whole other thing. But, they used to, a few years ago, they used to have a thing where they would issue a video statement as to why they made the decision they made on literally anything. And I feel like that's something they should be doing in these situations. Why are you coming up with the conclusion that you're coming up with versus what we as the audience who are also watching these games, we're seeing the same thing you're seeing, unless you're seeing a completely different angle that they're not showing us, which to me, I feel like, we pay what we pay for our packages. We pay for what we pay to watch these games. We should see every angle they can see. I feel like there should be no gray area.
Sometimes that video that they submit that explains why the suspension happened, you just go, you would have been better off not showing that video.
Yeah, but at least it's something, right?
I suppose.
Rather than getting nothing at all, and you're kind of you're sitting here, we're talking in a podcast about it going, what are they thinking? We'll never get that answer. So it's frustrating for sure. What else is bugging you, Brando?
That's about it, really.
Oh, that's good.
As far as, because I'm just...
I think
I'm calming down a little bit now.
Well, you had a few days to think about it, so little time to cool down.
I mean, in a bit of a segue, though, honestly, with some of the stuff that's happened, I think we should probably address some of the injuries that are happening to some seriously star players.
I can't believe the amount of injuries we're seeing in preseason hockey. This is probably the first time I can't think of any other year where we've seen this many injuries going into the regular season.
And a lot of the time, the reports on, the Leafs, and we've seen some from the Canucks because those are our main focus, they talked about how players actually were ramping up their training harder and earlier this preseason too. Now, some of these injuries are just like random
very, very freak injuries
types
for sure.
Of things, right? Yeah. Not necessarily related to the way you train or perform or prepare anyway, but you just go, holy smokes, these guys are all in the best shapes of their lives. Could you imagine if we just went out on like a beer league skate? What would happen?
I don't even want to think about it.
I'd break 8 bones.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go for a walk outside and I'm like done for. But, it's true. Like, these guys are professional athletes. They train all summer to come and play hockey. And then, one like look at I specifically think about the Drew Doughty injury, and it's such a freak injury. Yeah. But he's gone for so long. How is that going to affect LA? In terms of their playoff hopes, in terms of whatever, right?
So you can look at it in one aspect that this has happened to them before.
Yeah,
Doughty's been injured long term, I think twice, at least in his career. He's had concussions too. Prolonged amount of time off. So they've been through this before. I think because of the step they wanted to make this year, that's going to be frustrating.
Agreed.
But I do think that they're in a good enough spot The coaching staff is great. They've made some adjustments. They've made progress over last year. They didn't even expect to play how they ended up and played last year. And so, yeah, it's frustrating, but I do think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to figure it out, at least until he comes back.
But they'll just rely on the 1-3-1.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Boring to watch, but hey, LA, but a broken ankle, that's tough.
I can't, and he's not alone. I mean, there's so many random injuries out there. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other injuries that we have out there, Paul.
Yeah, we kind of already alluded to Patrick Laine, obviously, with the knee on knee. The way that his leg waved when he got hit, you knew that it was going to be a bad injury. It just got one of those freak injuries. Albeit he was skating in there like you skate as a 5-year-old into the blue line and wide legs like that.
As you have the hanging onto the bars at the front.
It's so funny listening to you guys talk because, of course, you're Leaf fans and you don't care at all about the Canadians, But yes, you're right. I mean, like that, and again, I think more than anything, that could be a combination of both players' skates getting caught in divots. Could be anything.
Perret looked like he had no clue what he was doing, so you can't give him credit for anything. Like sticking your leg out as an intention to hurt Laine, he doesn't even hardly know how to skate.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, Montreal Canadiens also have another player. Their not most recent draft pick, but the pick last year, David Reinbacher, is out for 5 to 6 months after having knee surgery.
That's rough. He looked so good. I saw him in 2 games before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so Laine, from what I understand, maybe you can tell me, is I don't think he's electing to get surgery,
Yeah,
right?
he declined getting the surgery.
Yeah, and so Reinbacher, on the other hand, has already had knee surgery.
Yeah, so he's going to be out longer because of the fact that he had surgery.
That's right.
At least 5 months, I think, is what I heard.
5 to 6 months, they said, on TSN. Yeah, looking at more injuries in the NHL, the Ottawa Senators have obviously a bunch of injuries. Nothing too major. Like, obviously, Stützle had that elbow from Jack-Eye. Apparently, Thomas Chabot's out for kind of week to week right now with some ailments, and Brady Tkachuk, when he went after Arbor, apparently I guess hurt his hand.
That happened to Dakota Joshua last year for the Canucks. Injured his hand fighting in defense of, I want to say, Garland. Somebody was trying to push Garland around, and he fought this guy, and I guess he just broke his knuckle or did something. He was out for quite a while before the playoffs started. So yeah, it was definitely it was a hit. They still made the playoffs. They still won the division. But these are risks that you take when you play the code. The code being standing up for your teammates or defending yourself for a hit that you make or whatever too. So this is kind of the game within the game, right? When it comes to hockey, but.
I will say that I did see a report today that Tkachuk and Stützle were both participating in practice.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so it sounds like if anything's ailing Brady, it'll be short term.
Artemi Panarin's out for a little bit right now too. I was reading about that.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure what the ailment was. Do we know what it was?
No, they haven't listed it. I'm looking on, to be fair, I'm not sure this is a hugely reliable source, but Yahoo Sports doesn't say specifically what the injury is, but it does list that he is injured.
I know that obviously the Leafs have dealt with a couple ailments. John Tavares is out for a little bit. They've been sitting Matthews to ensure that he's healthy for the start of the regular season. Nylander had a stick in the butt that kept him out for a game.
Well, he actually hit his head though, right, on a teammate. So like as funny as the injury is, because he got pushed by Robertson. So he was pushed by Robertson to try to catch up to the puck, but he fell forward and then he hit his head on his teammate's leg or something.
On one of the Canadians.
I thought it was another Leaf player. That's less sad, but definitely still sucks. It's a bad injury. And honestly, in the NHL, head injuries are scary because look at I compared to Vancouver and with Tucker Poolman, he's been out for, this is going to be his 3rd year. With a head injury, so he probably will never play again in the NHL.
What do you guys think about? There was a couple of comments made through social media and through the reporters after that game. Do you think there was a need for Robertson to give Nylander a push in that situation? Do you think that's a bigger deal than you really think it is? Because to me, I would think it doesn't matter if it's preseason or whatever. You're trying to win a hockey game.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you think that projecting your player forward, which happens 10 times a game, by the way.
Yeah.
If you think that's going to help him get back into the zone, back check, whatever the case may be, don't you think it's a good idea?
You do what you got to do, 100%. And I've seen it happen to Pettersson many times, and same thing, going back to like what we were talking about with all the injuries, most of them, if not all of them, were freak accidents. And I mean, not all of them, because I know there's a couple, but that is a freak accident. I don't believe Robertson was trying to injure his teammate. Yeah. I don't believe that there was any ill will there or any intent to try and injure your teammate. I think more than anything, he's just trying to help him get to that puck before the opposing player.
The Toronto media, man, they're fucking annoying.
Extremely annoying.
Making a big deal out of nothing.
That's how it. They come up with every narrative, right? And we would do the same theoretically. If it came to having to do a show every single day, we would try to come up with every possible narrative to get the fans involved and get people like us saying things like, "What are you talking about?" Because it's true. Like, these are just talking points more than anything. I don't truly at all believe that there's any issue with using your stick to push your teammate closer to a puck to win that battle over an opposing player.
Or you can be like Jaromir Jagr a few years ago when he was on the Flames and using your stick to pull yourself forward on a player.
Well, in his case, he was 50 at the time.
That is true. Yeah. I'll rapid fire through just a couple more of the ailments and injuries. Marchand didn't play tonight.
That's too bad. I feel so bad for him. That is my robot voice.
Watching his cousin on Sesame Street.
Laurent Brossoit is out for a little bit right now. He's got a knee ailment. Arturi Lekonen, who's in a non-contact jersey. Jason Robertson's not playing at the moment for the Stars. Drew Dowda we already know about.
Macklin Celebrini.
Yeah, Macklin Celebrini. Arthur Kaliev, who we talked about last podcast. Matt Boldy, who's a pretty big player in the Minnesota.
Yeah. Just signed a big contract this summer.
He did. Luke Hughes is out with the Devils right now.
Right. And that was interesting because the Luke Hughes thing, when they announced the NHL 25 cover athletes this year, which was, of course, the Hughes brothers, they still didn't know that Luke was injured. And it wasn't until like a couple of days after that they announced that he was injured. So, it kind of sucks for New Jersey, but I'm okay with it. I mean, I hope he gets better, but, I'm okay with him with that.
Brett Pesce is out right now. Ilya Sorokin, that's a big one for the Islanders.
For sure.
Panarin, we know about day-to-day. Erik Karlsson's dealing with some ailments on the Penguins right now, his upper body. We talked about Macklin Celebrini. Logan Couture's out. Yaroslav Askarov's out. Vlasic's out. Mugo Medulin. So the Sharks are taking a couple of pretty big hits right now.
Yeah, they are.
In regards to their players.
I'm okay with it.
Jared McCann on the Kraken. And William Karlsson on the Knights is day-to-day right now.
And then, of course, Thatcher Demko on Vancouver. What's interesting about all of those people you just listed, I've noticed there's a few goalies that are down and out. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but it was just the other day that Vancouver had placed a few players on waivers, and Yuri Patera, who was the goalie they signed this summer, was picked up on waivers by Boston.
Yeah, I saw that.
So with all this stuff going down with Jeremy Swayman, right? That Boston having kind of it's like a tug of war, right? Like you really feel like Swayman is kind of being like, he's pissed, like he's upset because Boston is saying all these things that aren't true. Like, oh, we offered him, a $64 million contract. But his agent literally came out there on social media and said, that never happened. And I don't know if you guys remember last year, but he went to arbitration and he was upset about the way that they were treating everything up until that point. So I don't know what's happening in Boston right now. It's tricky.
Well, I do. They've been offered Allmark and a first-round pick for Swayman from Ottawa.
Oh yes, that's right. I heard that. Do you guys follow Spit and Chicklets at all on social media?
A little bit. Yep.
So, what about Biz Nasty?
The Biz.
So I don't know if you've been following, but he's been trying to be, and it's hilarious. He's been trying to be an insider on social media. That's one thing I'll promise you right now, audience, I will never try to be an insider on social media because of like what's happened to him. He tried reporting at least 4 times when this whole thing went down with Swayman. He tried reporting different things, like, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm hearing. Every single thing he reported turned out to be a lie or a joke. And he was getting burned every single time. He'd have to retract every single time he posted that because he's like, oh, never mind, this is something else. So it's just funny when that's going down and really what's actually happening. Like, part of me wonders, is Swayman going to be a Boston Bruin this season?
Yeah, it's hard to say. If you look at, I guess, what's building up in terms of tension between, I guess, his agent, him, and obviously the team. Like, I can quote from what I saw in the conference. Cam Neely said, I don't want to get into the weeds with what his ask is, but I don't know that I have 64 million reasons why I'd not be playing right now.
But I do know that I have 64 million reasons. That's what it came down to, and that's where his agent came back and said, I don't know where $64 million is coming from because that was never an offer. And I can see why they would be upset about that.
Yeah.
You're basically trash talking your own player to try and encourage something of a signing, when really what it's doing is it's creating a negative effect. They're going to end up having to trade away his rights in order to get some decent goaltending on their team.
Yeah, I can't work it out. Like his agent even said, we're extremely disappointed that this wasn't fair to Jeremy to even have that even brought up to the public 100%, to hear.
Yeah,
it's
like airing out your dirty laundry.
Quite literally.
On X earlier, I was following this Boston podcaster who I won't mention a name just yet, but he sort of hinted that there might be more going on than people think here, and the fact that Swayman's agent, who is Louis Gross, who is kind of known for being kind of shady and play a lot of hardball, that he's kind of had a plan this whole time as far as, he knows the cap is going up, and it's going to continue to go up because the NHLPA and the NHL have just basically paid off their debts from COVID.
Right.
With the escrow and all that stuff.
Right.
So now, continuously, the cap should go up for probably 3 or 4 seasons.
That's right, yeah.
And so he knows there's going to be more money available. So he's pushing hard for his client. He did hint that the offer came for $64 million, and he never even gave it to Swayman because he knew what Swayman was asking for, which I believe is 8.5 times 8. Is what he wants. Now, the report also suggested that once it became public, that when Neely's kind of coming out and using the media now and saying, hey, 64 million reasons, blah, 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 then Louis Gross went to Swayman and said, hey, actually, just so you know, it was 7.8 that they offered, and it was recently, and that sort of thing. So now there's kind of like this small town conspiracy theory saying Gross is kind of playing both sides.
Yeah.
Obviously to try to still get the best for Swayman, but almost pitting them against each other in an indirect way and probably a way that he didn't actually intend to do. So there's another theory to think about.
It's funny because I look at this and the only, like, I don't even have a theory as to what can happen here. My mindset is like, with all this pushing and shoving, at what point do they just go, you know what, like, we've got to play hockey, and we're trying to better our team. Like, you're gonna have to trade him. It's literally the only way you're gonna be able to move on and improve your team.
And now management looks silly if they do that. Right?
That's true,
because they just traded away Allmark for that reason. Because Swayman was their guy.
And you know what's gonna happen is he's gonna get traded to the West. That's what's gonna happen. Because you're not going to want to have to face the guy.
No, not at all. Well, you have to, like, in different industries, you'll see sometimes where they come together and work together. If you're looking at, say, the movie industry and the whole Marvel thing with Spider-Man, like, there was a point where, after Spider-Man, they had introduced Spider-Man into the Civil War and into Avengers, there was talks of possibly Sony not bringing him back. And then, the main character, the actor, Tom Holland, like, was actually able to talk to both studios and get them to come together and work together. Maybe, does Swayman want to play in Boston now, considering all this has happened? Maybe, if he does, maybe he can convince his, the team and the agent to, we'll give up a little. You give a little, like how it should be in the NHL. But, a player that's played well, he wants his money, if that's how he's thinking. Maybe he does need to be traded, like you're saying, because of that.
And I know there's plenty of teams that will pay to play to have a guy like that on their team. But yeah, you're right. I am sort of from the outside looking in. I'm a believer that it sounds like he doesn't want to be a Bruin.
Yeah.
Like, especially after what they went through last year with arbitration and stuff, it was such a negative kind of impact on the player. I think they made a mistake in getting rid of Allmark when they probably should have looked at trading Swayman.
And I was going to allude to your point, Joe, in saying I think probably the most important factor in this whole impasse, if you will, is the fact that they've been there before.
Yeah.
This has happened before fairly recently.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's not so much the team as it is who's running the team.
Yeah, he's running the show.
It's definitely, it's interesting because, that is probably the big storyline right now in the NHL. But we do have, other kind of signings that have happened. I know that Calgary just made a big signing recently.
Yeah, Tyson Barrie, their PTO defenseman, he just signed 1 year, 1.25 today.
So, and Barrie, he used to be a Leaf, right? So Barrie used to be a Leaf. Let me rephrase this. So you guys should know Barrie because he played for your team. Maybe you can kind of describe what the Flames are getting in Tyson Barrie.
Well, they already know what they got in Nazem Kadri, let's just say that, and I kind of wish the Leafs still had that player. But I think Paul would agree with me in saying that at the time it was probably a good trade. Barrie had just come off basically 2 career seasons in a row, and he was exactly what the Leafs were looking for on defense. Right-handed shot, puck-moving defenseman who can skate well.
Yeah, considering the value of the trade at the time, because it was Kadri and Calle Rosen at the time that went to Colorado for Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot at the time. In terms of the value, Kerfoot was a serviceable player, and Barrie is a good puck-moving defenseman. The guy can skate like the wind and has got good hands. Just doesn't, I think, his biggest issue is that he takes too many chances with the puck and not strong on his two-way
Gives
play.
up his position a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got 15 points in 41 games last season with the Nashville Predators. Prior to that, with Nashville again, he only played 24 games, 12 points in 24 games. Those are actually decent points in 24 games, but it's tough. Looking on the outside from the last season with 41 games played, I'm starting to think his age is getting to him a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 33 years old, 5'11", 197 pounds. I'm not sure if that's accurate in terms of his weight, but the numbers specifically, if I'm a Flames fan, I would not expect him to garner a lot of points. That being said, I don't think the Flames are expecting to garner a lot of points this year anyway.
No.
So I'll go on a limb and say that that's a decent signing for the Flames, just based on the fact of what's expected of them this year.
So because this is how I feel about how Barrie played with the Leafs, is I mainly think that his lack of success was probably to do with systems.
Yeah.
And
who he's playing with probably too.
Utilized possibly incorrectly based on his skill set. Do you guys feel that really does have a huge impact on a player? Now, can we go as far to say as a player that's kind of like mediocre, decent? Like, we're not talking Connor McDavid. I don't think it's going to matter what system you put him in.
Yeah.
He's just going to be the best player on the ice. But when you get guys like Tyson Barrie, who are kind of, mid-tier players, your second pair defenseman, or, if you're talking forward, maybe your third line winger or something like that, do you think system does play a factor because maybe those players have limited strengths?
Well, I can give you a perfect example of that. I mean, look at Vancouver, right? The system is literally what made them what they were last year. Rick Tocchet came in and he brought in the coaching staff he brought in. They're better defensively. They're better offensively. It's all because of system. The one thing we talked about last episode was the term the country club atmosphere. That's a system thing, right? It's not just a system, but it's a culture thing. But in the end, yeah, I definitely think it's an important factor. So with somebody like Tyson Barrie coming into Calgary, as long as he's got the right defensive coaching and as long as he's got the right partner to play with, he can thrive in that position for sure.
Yeah, you're talking about partners. Like, it's the chemistry you have who you're playing with is gonna make or break you as a player sometimes.
That's
too.
right.
When he played in Colorado, he's playing with Nathan MacKinnon, and that guy can do everything. And if Barrie, who has a pretty decent shot and a decent first pass, if he can get it to MacKinnon or get it from MacKinnon, of course he's going to put up the points and show his value in that end compared to maybe with Nashville last year, where you don't necessarily have like an absolute superstar. You got star players on the team. You don't have an absolute superstar. Maybe that's affecting how he's able to distribute and get the puck because he doesn't have the same kind of work ethic and technique as the previous teams that he's played on.
2018, 2019, he played with Colorado. It was his last year with Colorado. So 2018, 2019, playing with Colorado, it was his last year before going to the Leafs. He played 78 games, and he got 59 points.
Yeah.
So that's his best season of his career. Prior to that, the year prior, 2017, 2018, 57 points in 68 games played. So basically, on average, I would think that's probably his best season. If he had played 82 games, you got to think he would have garnered more points. But, you know, I think more than anything, he's lacked a little consistency in his scoring totals. But, you know, whether he can bring better defensive depth for Calgary or whether he can bring some more scoring offense, it really depends on coaching, I think, and who he plays with.
Yeah, like there's definitely need, I think, in Calgary right now for NHL level defensemen, and Tyson Barrie would be an NHL level defenseman. Like you got Mackenzie Weegar, you do have Rasmus Anderson, but it kind of starts to fall off after that, considering some of the trades and players they let go. Obviously, during the trade deadline and this offseason.
But he also brings a veteran presence, too, which is something you need in a younger locker room, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some training camp cuts. We have a little time here. So, Paul, I know you had some notes to add, but let me just start with a couple of cuts from the Canucks first. In the other day, I was just recently talking about the waiver claims that was a waiver claim that was made on Jiri Patera. At the same time, they did waive Phil DiGiuseppe, as well as they actually sent down Jonathan Lekkerimäki, who was somebody I was thinking they weren't going to send down to start, just based on the preseason he's had. He hasn't scored a lot of points, but he's definitely shown that he's able to play the NHL game. He reads the plays well. He's able to, make clean passes. But I think it's also a good thing that he's going to get a chance to kind of cook in the AHL. If you can bring that game to the AHL, you'll be a call up, no problem, the first round, or first chance they get. But, in that same discussion, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of players that they decided to keep with the big club, and that is Aatu Ratu and also Arshdeep Bains, two players from the AHL who were they were the high-end scorers last year in the AHL, but they've shown that they can play with the big club and they can score points with the big club as well. So Aatu Ratu, one of his biggest skill sets is face-offs. He's actually a lefty, but he does really well flipping his stick and playing a right-handed face-off draw, and it's something that the Canucks were actually missing in their bottom six. So this is going to be a huge benefit to them. It's kind of what he's taken that over from Lindholm, who obviously has gone on to play with Boston. So, it's exciting to see a young player be able to take that on and be successful with it. I mean, I know it's just the preseason, but he's played every single preseason game, and he's played really well face-off. He's had really good face-off percentage, and he's scoring some points as well. Arshdeep Bains is scoring. He's getting into the right spots as well, and something to look forward to.
I have a question for you, Joe. And if I were to go back on X, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Samsung Music, all those places where you can find the Puck and Pod, and listen to 2 episodes ago.
That's right.
Where you talked about a couple of players that you were really looking forward to seeing in training camp in Lekkerimäki, Ratu, and Kiefer Sherwood.
Kiefer Sherwood, yes.
So what have you seen from those 3 players real quick so far?
So again, going back with Aatu Ratu, for me, the most impressive thing is just the positioning and his faceoffs. The fact that he's winning faceoffs against NHL level players, for me is the most impressive thing. But again, positioning, he's playing on PP1 for them, Power Play 1, where he's able to, He's making the right passes at the right time, so his hockey sense is there. His speed is there, which is actually really impressive because he was not known as a fast skater. So he's obviously improved his skating over the last couple of years. Jonathan Lekkerimäki, to me, he's definitely the kind of player you want to have on your team. The thing that I feel like he's kind of missing right now is the confidence that you're supposed to have. It's tough to say because it's not to say he's not a confident player. He is a confident player, but like for him, it's almost like he's squeezing the stick a little too tight. So, he's taking the shots, but sometimes he's not taking the shots when he should be taking the shots. And I think you guys as Leaf fans know what I'm talking about because there's a few players that have that same problem. But yeah, so that's probably his biggest thing. So he's going to go to the AHL, score some goals, get that confidence back, and he'll be back with Vancouver, no problem. And then, yeah, Kiefer Sherwood, the one thing that's really impressed me with him this early, and I'm talking preseason, and maybe this has something to do with the kind of level that other teams are playing at, but he's already getting in people's faces. He's being a pest. He's doing the things he's supposed to be doing. This is the reason they signed him, because of what he did to Vancouver in the playoffs last year. So it's really impressive. I like the fact that he's not missing a beat when it comes to position and when it comes to making the right pass at the right time. But also he's getting in people's faces, and he doesn't care whose face he's getting into. It could be a guy that's 2 times bigger than him. He doesn't care, and I love that. And that's what I'm pretty sure every Canuck fan feels the same way.
Obviously, you're talking about the Canucks and the players that you're excited about, and obviously we've talked about on previous podcasts our excitement for the Leafs and stuff too in terms of what's going on. And preseason for a guy like Nick Robertson, he's been sent down basically the last 2 years, but at least for cap concern reasons. The preseason that he's having so far this season, and the fact that he was having a contract holdout, you have to wonder how much has he had enough of an impression this time that there's no way they can send him down, or is there still the possibility that maybe there's a bit of saltiness between the management with him?
So we were saying 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, how this guy, it's his time. Here's your opportunity. You just got signed to a contract. Show the team what you can do. I was skeptical. You weren't, I think. You might have to edit that out, Joe. But he's done it. He really has shown so far. And I think he's only played in 3 games. I think he's playing again tonight.
He is, yeah.
And he's been given opportunity playing on the top line. His goal the other night where he came back on a back check and stripped the player of the puck, came back and just ripped it 5-hole. That's what the guy can do. He can shoot. As I've mentioned, the only other player on the team, maybe 2 guys, but one for sure is Austin Matthews that can shoot better than Nick Robertson. Nylander probably gives him a run for his money, but the guy is unreal. That's what he does. That's what he is there to do, and that right now is what he's doing. So if he can continue playing with the pace that he is and taking into consideration the defensive part of the game, because I know Berube is going to be huge on that. If he can have that good combination and things are going well for him, that's exactly what he needs to do, and that's exactly what the team needs.
So from the outside looking in, to me, it just seems like it's a coaching change. And also, because he just signed a 1-year contract, correct?
Just a 1 year.
So because he signed that 1-year contract, part of me wonders if he's kind of playing it like a contract year. You know how players kind of turn it on for a contract year? It reminds me of Brock Besser last year. Yeah. Even though it wasn't a contract year for him, but this year is. It kind of reminds me they want to show what they're worth, and that is a good thing for Leaf fans.
I don't like the way he went about it, truly.
Right.
But all he wanted at the end of the day was an opportunity, and it looks like so far that's what he's getting, and he's capitalizing. So you got to give kudos to him. He's doing a great job for himself and possibly his future.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you could say in years past he's probably earned a spot on the team sooner than he's gotten it each year, because obviously he's been called up each and every time the last couple of years. This year it seems to be a definite you're going to be on this team. Management still could do what they wanted, and they could send him down, but it would be very irresponsible, in my opinion, as management to do that to him, because he is showing that he really does actually belong on the team this year.
And so far, he shows that he wants to be there. He's going to be there, and he's going to get top line minutes. He's going to be on the second line, which makes you wonder also, what have you thought about Max Pacioretty?
That's kind of what I was going to get to. By the time this podcast airs next week, we will know what rosters look like for the regular season. So as you are listening to this right now, you already know what the roster looks like. But as we record right now, we have no clue. And the other question you have to ask is, how close to the cap are the Leafs right now?
Well, there's talks of already players to be traded and so on. I was watching on I think it was Sportsnet the other day. They were talking about even Timothy Liljegren being the odd man out because Marshall Rifai is having a really good preseason. And
what's his contract?
He's $3 million a year for the next 2 years.
Okay.
And on top of that, Hakanpää hasn't played yet either.
That's right.
He hasn't played yet.
I believe he was supposed to play today. Correct?
I think he's in the lineup tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, as we record this, we don't know the score of the game, anything like that. And we are not talking about it, are we? That's right. Canucks don't play today, so I don't have to worry about that so much. But
yeah, in terms of cuts, like obviously in the Leafs situation, and a lot of team situations, they got to get under the cap. So whether that means minusing multiple players or minusing one bigger contract, you look at LA with the fact that Doughty went down, and they're going to need somebody who's either close to the same level or an NHL caliber defenseman. If a guy like Timothy Liljegren is available, will maybe LA look to come in and trade for him, considering Doughty's out now? Yeah,
it'll be interesting to kind of see. I'm very intrigued to see how things play out for all the teams over the next few days because, you kind of wonder, like, is there going to be multiple trades? Or is it going to be, people getting waived and picked up that really surprise us?
It turns into a flurry there for a few days. It
does.
Sure.
Well, you got all your teams making like the big cuts now too to trim down the roster. You get all the minor kind of players being sent down. Like the Leafs just sent down like 13 players the other day. Yeah. One of them being Nick Abruzzese, who's he's got a ton of speed. He's got some talent. He's got to go through waivers. Not necessarily being a Maple Leafs fan. He's not a player I want to see go on waivers because he could be picked up with the talent that he has. But that's a risk you have to take sometimes when you're trying to build your roster.
That was the feeling I had about Phil DiGiuseppe getting put on waivers because the whole thing was DiGiuseppe is a very serviceable player, and Rick Tocchet said in an interview that he's like, I hope he doesn't get claimed because I love the guy and I want him on my team. It's just the way it works when you have depth, right? And this is kind of it's a good problem to have, but at the same time, like, you really don't want to lose a player like that.
Yeah, it's hard when they reach a certain age because I believe you start becoming waiver eligible. I believe it's by 23, is it?
I think it has something to do with after you sign your first real contract.
Real contract, okay.
So after your ELC is done, the moment you sign a real contract, you're now waiver eligible, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. If you know that we're wrong, please let us know in the comments.
Please.
Nicely.
Yeah, you can call us idiots if you want to, but we will own up to it. But there was, just moving off of the Leafs, if you don't mind, just because we're running a little short on time, there are other cuts that are kind of notable, in the NHL, and maybe you have a couple you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, Mike Hoffman was released from Edmonton. Again, NHL, in my opinion, still an NHL caliber player, but I guess just not fitting in the same talent level as the rest of the team, so he was let go.
Maybe I can add one. Yep. Sammy Blais, who was on a PTO for Vancouver, did not get signed by Vancouver. However, he does have an AHL contract with the Abbotsford Canucks, so he's still technically can be signed by Vancouver if they decide that they like him later on down the road, but he will be playing in Abbotsford.
Yeah, and looking at other, again, we're looking at Canadian teams here. Nikolai Kuhlman, who did try to make an NHL comeback
after what, like 8 years or something?
6 years.
6 years
away from the league. He was let go by the Sens. 38-year-old, you're gone for 6 years. His story was a bit kind of surprising. I guess he's got a good friendship with Dave Poulin and Steve Stais, so he was actually able to somewhat convince them to let him try out because his son plays minor hockey right now in the Toronto area. So, wanted to get a chance. He was given the chance. Unfortunately, just Father Time has paid its price on him.
I mean, good on the Sens for giving him a shot. I mean, it's a free shot, but in the end, sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's interesting because I've seen PTOs not get signed, and then those players end up getting assigned eventually, like with other teams and stuff, because it's a free player, right? But it's tough. It's tough. But this is the most exciting time for us hockey fans. How do you guys feel coming into the regular season in the next week?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions up in the air. Some of these key factors going into the season, like I kind of was talking about bugging me earlier about the Department of Player Safety and how there seems to be a lot of risky play up in the NHL right now. On top of that, a lot of key injuries to some teams, so you don't know how it's going to impact them necessarily. The Jeremy Swayman contract with the Bruins, who would generally be considered a top player in the Atlantic Division, right? Because that contract, whatever it ends up being, they need him to play for that team. Yeah. And the way things are right now, it's he's not looking very great, right? And then, as a Leaf fan, an entire new coaching staff coming in, I think that's kind of the top of the list for me to be paying attention to. Some of those key changes that maybe they're making to the way they play the game and the culture they're trying to instill, and this ideology of being a Maple Leaf and how everybody wants to be a Maple Leaf and all these things. Well, now these guys got to prove that this is the place you want to be, right? I am very optimistic about this season for Toronto, and the captaincy change. There's been a lot of information and news surrounding the team, and just to see if maybe they can start making a push as not just being a playoff team in the Atlantic, but being a force in the NHL.
Yeah.
I'm kind of actually excited to see what's going to happen with Utah, to be honest. I want to see if the roster changes they have made a difference, what the atmosphere and the culture is going to be like in Utah compared to what it was in Arizona. The fact that they were playing in a 5,000 seat arena and now they're going to be moving to an NHL sized stadium. There's still some tweaks and I guess issues with the stadium themselves. I guess the jumbotron comes down too low and some people can't see the ice.
Well, I was going to say, when you compare it to the 5,000 seat arena that they were playing in, at least you could see everything. Yeah. And in this arena, apparently, have you seen the video where the guy's in the section, the upper bowl, and he can't see the goal?
Yeah.
So he's got to watch the jumbotron in order to be able to see what's happening, which is like, okay, I hope that seat is really cheap because, Yeah, you'd
hope that. I know that there was a bit of discussion from what I saw in some online articles about that being renovated, hopefully by start of next season.
That was what they were talking about when they first took over the team.
Yeah. It's still weird that they're the Utah Hockey Club and not an actual team name yet, but,
we all know they'll be the Yeti by next year.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't hate that.
I don't hate it either.
I
like it. I think it's cool.
So yeah, I'm interested to see that. Obviously, rivalries are always fun to watch. I really enjoy watching a game when you got a rival team, whether it's Calgary and Edmonton or Vancouver, Seattle, Toronto, Ottawa, or Montreal.
Vancouver, Seattle, by the way, is a brand new rivalry.
Yeah,
like it's
and
not
even heating up.
It is.
Yeah.
It's heating up in a way that most rivalries don't typically heat up. It's not a playoff thing. It's just the way one player is affecting the other team, and that's how this is developing.
I felt in a way it's almost like both teams kind of realized that, you know what? We should be a rivalry, even though we're not, so let's just do it.
Yeah.
And they're doing it, and I don't think they're liking it very much.
No, I love it. I love it as a Canuck fan. I'm excited. I think I love it because I know Canucks are going to be better than them for a couple of years. But when they get better and they become that team that you play in the playoffs, I think that's going to be a real fun kind of rivalry for sure.
And, look at some of the American rivalries too, like the Pennsylvania rivalry between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh is good. The Florida and Tampa rivalry is a really, really good one. If Houston ever gets a team, I would love to see a Dallas and Houston rivalry in the future.
That'll be a fun one.
There's still talk of more expansion happening, and if Quebec City gets that opportunity again, seeing a all-French rivalry
that'd
would
be sweet.
Pretty great to see again.
Yeah.
That would be Le Nasty.
Le Nasty.
Well, I'll tell you, the one thing I'm kind of looking forward to this year is I every year I always kind of think, okay, well, this team is going to be bottom of the barrel, right? So every year there's always some team that has, they don't have very exciting players, so that they're going to be kind of a poor team. Who is going to be the number one team, the number one overall pick per se, this year for the draft? And you look at all these teams that are going to struggle, the one thing I look forward to the most is who's going to surprise us. Who's going to come into next season and be like, they were supposed to be bad, but they ended up being not bad. Or, they got more points than I expected them to get. You know what I mean? For me, I can see Calgary kind of sneaking in and being a sneaky better team than most people expect them to be. Yeah. So that's how I feel. I'm looking forward to that kind of thing for this season. Boys, I think I've had enough talk of hockey and sports. Let's talk about some movies. We haven't talked about movies in a couple of podcasts now. And you know what? I did say last episode we would discuss this. So let us discuss random sports movies. And what I mean by that, of course, is sports that you don't typically think of. Let's talk about golf.
When you think of golf and you think of a movie, one that's always, you can think of ones like Tin Cup or you can think of like a movie like Caddyshack, and they are classic movies to watch. One that sticks with me, and because it kind of has multiple sports in it, but there's one main focus, which is golf. That's Happy Gilmore with Adam Sandler. The fact that he's a hockey player in it, and Lily tried to stab somebody with his skate in the movie. Obviously the gruffness and the roughness that he had from hockey, he brought it over to the game of golf. Inadvertently, obviously, in the movie, figured out that he could drive the ball 400 yards, which is pretty crazy when you're looking at a movie. Obviously, you don't really see that in real life, but it was pretty intense, and it's such a funny movie. It's so quotable. What were some of your thoughts on Happy?
Well, you can't tell me that you've never tried to hit the golf ball like Happy Gilmore.
Yeah.
Every time I play.
Everybody
every single
tried.
time I play.
And nobody can do it because it's literally impossible. But yeah, no, that movie is one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies when I think about all the movies he's done.
Yeah.
Happy Gilmore, Billy Madison is up there.
Big Daddy.
The Wedding Singer, Big Daddy. He's got a lot of hits. But that one in particular is definitely like one of my favorites. Bob Barker was in that movie. Like, come on.
It's the boxing aspect.
Yeah, like it's wonderful. It's a great movie.
Other than Adam Sandler and probably Christopher McDonald, I guess, Ben Stiller makes a bit of a cameo.
Yeah.
But for the most part, there's not a lot of super common actors in that movie. And I think that it's one of those generational comedies, full of one-liners and things that you use in your everyday life. A lot of Adam Sandler movies are like that for me, but just there's so many one-liners and different things that happen in that movie that you constantly bring it up as part of pop culture and humor and even to each other and to friends, right?
Well, I've got a list of the one-liners here from that movie. I got one that's, "I'm stupid, you're smart. I was wrong, you were right. You're the best, I'm the worst. You're very good looking, I'm not attractive." When he's talking to his girlfriend in that movie.
No, he was talking to Chubbs with that one.
No.
Yeah,
Was
he
it
was
Chubbs?
trying to get Chubbs'
Oh,
forgiveness.
that's right. It was Chubbs. Yeah,
it
that's
was
right.
Chubbs,
Did you even
yeah.
watch the movie, Paul?
I did.
Just kidding.
I'm sorry. Well, you're talking
I
about
wanna kiss you all over.
talking about Chubbs. His quote was, "It's all in the hips. It's all in the hips."
My wife did that to me last night when I was standing in the kitchen.
I love that.
I don't know if I want to know what was happening in that conversation, but
I was taking my meds before bed, actually.
I loved the banter that he had with Shooter McGavin, Chris McDonald in that movie. The
You eat pieces of poop
crap for breakfast, and even the part in the bar where he breaks the glass and he talks about trying to find the pieces of the glass. But the part where Chris McDonald's walking out, he's like,
Listen to what I say, or you'll pay.
that's right.
Adam Sandler.
Maybe I should eat some hay down by the bay.
Yeah. Why don't I eat some hay? Make some things out of clay. Lay by the bay. I just may. What do you say?
Yeah, the one-liners are really great in that movie, and coming back to like the cast in particular, like there are a lot of people that we can now look back and say like they're famous now, right? Like the guy who played Chubbs was Carl Weathers, who of course we know from Rocky, and I don't know if you fellas knew this, but he played for the BC Lions.
I did not know
He was
that,
a football
actually.
player for the BC Lions.
And unfortunately, we just lost him in March.
We did, yeah. Well, he's not the only one. Bob Barker, of course, too. So the late, great Bob Barker, the late, great Carl Weathers. Julie Bowen was on there, too. She was in Modern Family.
Yep.
And of course, Ben Stiller, like you said. And he's a memorable character in that movie.
Hal is amazing.
Yeah.
Torty, straight down to the right, dear.
You can
Now you just pull your duty.
you can trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up.
Anybody else's fingers hurt?
It's the best. It's the best. No, that's definitely. I'll go with you on that. It is definitely one of, if not the best golf movie out there in terms of a true comedy in what it's trying to achieve. Like, it's a great movie. It's one of those movies you can watch over and over and over again. And I'm happy to hear they're making another one.
Yeah, they are making a sequel.
One thing that's interesting about the character that Adam Sandler plays is that they're kind of poking fun at someone who doesn't really know anything about golf but ends up being a good golfer.
That's right.
In real life, Adam Sandler's a damn good golfer.
Yeah, he is. Well, he's big at sports in general. He plays
is,
basketball too. Every week he plays pickup game.
Nice. That's really cool.
I think he actually plays more than one day a week too. So,
Looking at the sequel, Netflix is going to be taking part in producing that. They're going to bring Julie Bowen back. They're bringing Christopher McDonald back. Travis Kelce is apparently supposed to have a cameo in the movie.
that should be interesting.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. Their actress Margaret Qualley, don't know too much about her.
Margaret Qualley.
Qualley, yep.
She was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Okay.
She was
Oh,
one,
yeah, I
she was
know.
one of the hippie girls.
I remember her now.
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie, actually. Quentin Tarantino. You guys should check it out. And I guess the
Yeah, Brandon, check it out.
the rapper Bad Bunny is going to be in the movie, too.
Yeah, I know who that is. He was on SNL.
Bad Bunny?
Yeah, he
Bunny.
was he was on SNL. He's actually really funny on SNL. Some really funny characters. I look forward to the movie. I think it's going to be interesting. The way they do these movies, especially these kind of like not remakes but like sequels after a long period of time, like you don't expect much, like we were talking about the Axel Foley movie recently, and I just feel like I went into it not expecting much because I know what I know what comes out of these movies, but this, I feel like it's going to be kind of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be nice to see the characters again.
Well, and you'll get to see some of, obviously, Sandler's friends who've taken part in his past films, like Peter Dante's been in past movies with him. Same with...
Grandma's Boy. That's what I remember him from.
Yeah, same with Alan Covert, has been in many Sandler films, as well as...
Probably Rob Schneider, I would imagine.
Rob Schneider.
The guy who played his caddy, I can't remember his name.
The kid?
Joe Flaherty.
Joe Flaherty.
Yeah,
he's in all
But
that.
it wasn't his caddy.
No, Joe Flaherty was the guy that said, "Jackass."
Yeah, and his one other friend that's usually in his movies, Blake Clark, not likely to be in this one, but any Sandler movie that you're catching in the past, you always see those three: Peter Dante, Blake Clark, and Alan Covert.
That's right. And then also, like you say, Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider,
who we absolutely love.
We do.
He's the best kind of supporting character in every movie that Adam Sandler does. All right, Brando, let's talk about your sport. Which one did you pick out of the hat?
Well, I mean, really, there's only one movie that I've ever seen or heard of about it, but Dodgeball. I just went kind of obscure, and I thought it was a good selection. You've got some weird stuff going on for sure. If you haven't seen Dodgeball, basically the gist of the movie is some guy's laid on his rent at a local gym. He's the owner, and a corporate company wants to come in and buy them up and take over space and make it one big mega gym. And of course, there's a dodgeball tournament in Las Vegas. That
big prize money?
The big prize money, for sure, that would catch them up and pay their bills, etc., etc. So they compete in this tournament, the underdog, Cinderella story, whatever you want to call it, and Bob's your uncle, and Alan's your pirate, and and all that jazz. And
another Ben Stiller movie, too.
Another Ben Stiller movie. You know what?
Much more prominent role this time.
He's not. I'm not a huge fan of him, as I mentioned, but there is a lot of movies he's in that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because he's in it, I guess.
Right.
Like The Night at the Museums.
Yeah.
We love those movies.
I love them, too.
I absolutely love those movies. So, but, lots of comedy. Jason Bateman's in that movie as well. Bold move, Cotton.
Yeah. Also, actually, underrated role in that movie, Gary Cole, who plays Cotton. He's the announcer.
Right.
Gary Cole, I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Cole, but like everything he is in, he is spectacular in.
He is, actually.
I absolutely love Gary. He's the kind of actor I would want to be. Just like in everything, and you're something different. If you've never seen the movie Office Space, go and see that movie. Gary Cole is spectacular in that movie. But in this movie specifically, too, he's great.
There are a lot of supporting actors in that movie, too. Justin Long's in that film. Rip Torn, who's a Canadian actor, again, who we lost, in that movie as well. And
Steve the Pirate, Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk, that's right.
Another Canadian.
He's also Canadian, absolutely. And just the connection, the chemistry between, especially those guys on the Average Joe side, which is what the gym and the team is called, and also Christine Taylor, who plays the lawyer.
That's right. Yeah, she's Ben Stiller's wife
In
real life.
And they were married like when he made that movie, so it's actually interesting the dynamic between them.
Yeah.
That they're like rivals, but obviously married in real life.
She was disgusted by him, and which I mean that obviously they played that well.
Yeah,
They did very well.
you have lots of one-liners in that one too. A couple of my favorites are if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
That's right.
What?
Yeah, we Devin and I reference it all the time. But that's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it'll pay off for him. And what is it? Dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge.
That's right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then I also liked a couple of the cameo appearances. You had David Hasselhoff and
William Shatner.
Chuck Norris, William Shatner. Yeah, it was. There were some pretty good cameos in that. All around comedy. And we didn't even mention Vince Vaughn. That style of comedy for him is simple. It's every day.
Yeah,
it's a Tuesday.
He's basically playing himself in that movie.
That's right.
Which that's how Vince Vaughn is. Like he's typically himself in every movie. But it's fun because he's Mr. Everyman. It comes across as hilarious when all this weird crap happens, right? So no, it's definitely one of my favorites out there too, for sure.
I always love reading the trivia on the IMDb app. Whenever I'm watching a movie, I always look it up. And there was one thing that I found was pretty cool and interesting about it is, according to a lot of the members of the cast, the hardest part of filming the movie was not flinching even when they knew a ball was coming.
I believe that.
Because you have to basically, you can't get hit.
Yeah, and so if you do get hit, you have to portray like you don't see the ball coming.
That's right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how hard that actually would be.
Maybe they would throw it. Maybe they would try to throw it sporadically without or surprise them with it or whatever to make it work. But yeah, I could see how that would be really hard. For sure.
What's your movie, Joe? What's your sport?
Well, ironically, all three of our movies are comedies. And I believe that's we did that on purpose. Let's be honest. My movie is a bowling movie, and I'm pretty sure you guys know what it is. However, there's a couple of options. The Big Lebowski is a great bowling movie.
100%.
It's not about bowling, but it has bowling in it. But this movie in particular is a movie brought to you by the Farrelly brothers. I'm
already laughing.
This movie is brought to you by the Farrelly brothers of There's Something About Mary fame, but that came after this movie, and this movie, of course, is Kingpin, starring Woody Harrelson as Roy Munson, and a former Pro Bowler whose career was cut off prematurely, and I think you guys know what I'm saying. Randy Quaid, who plays Ishmael, who's an Amish young man whose innocent naivety leaves him to follow Roy. Bill Murray plays the famous Ernie McCracken. He's a scam artist and a former Pro Bowler. And, of course, Vanessa Angel, who plays Claudia, a woman who uses her beauty to hustle money from people. And she does a really good job at it. And so she ends up, without giving too much away, she ends up joining our lead characters in trying to make some money. Ishmael is basically trying to earn money for his Amish people because they're about to be kicked out of their land because they need money to be able to pay for their land. So Ishmael is trying to be Mr. Hero so he can impress this girl that he's attracted to in his Amish land, and it's a fun movie. It's hilarious. Literally some of the best one-liners, but unfortunately I can't repeat a lot of them because there's swearing in almost every one of them.
I got one. I got a good one. You don't mow another man's lawn. Right after he knocks the guy out in the bar.
Actually, I have the best one-liner from that whole movie. Oh, sorry I was taking so long. I was just trying to milk the cow. We don't have a cow. We got a bull. And he's drinking the milk. Best one-liner in the whole thing. But yeah, basically the premise of the movie is a star bowler whose career was prematurely cut off hopes to ride a new prodigy to success and riches. And the prodigy, of course, being the Ishmael character. So, yeah, it's a wonderful movie. And I didn't actually know that it came out before There's Something About Mary, but it actually came out 2 years prior. So, if you aren't familiar with the Farrelly brothers, they are the ones who are responsible for the movie Dumb and Dumber. And There's Something About Mary and Kingpin. And they have a lot of hits, actually. Jim Carrey's been in a couple of them, too.
Me, Myself, and Irene.
Me, Myself, and Irene. That's right.
One of two movies I've seen in the theaters twice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I've seen There's Something About Mary a few times in theaters because I laughed so hard at that movie.
They also did a movie called Stuck on You.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Matt Damon, Greg Kinnear in Stuck on You. That's a great movie too. We could talk a lot about Greg Kinnear movies. I like a lot of movies he's in. So going back to Kingpin, it's literally from beginning to end. It is a hilarious movie, and it's ridiculous. Like when you think about the fact that it's about bowling, but to be fair, I know people who are big into bowling. Brandon, you bowled.
Yeah, I mean,
and you know what people are like.
That's right. I know how intense situations can be, especially if you're in like a high competition tournament, whatever competition you're in. If you're a league bowler, if you're a league dart player, if you play horseshoes, if you play crokinole.
Yeah, literally anything can be competitive.
That's
like darts.
Right.
Darts, for crying out loud. It's the same thing. But, this movie kind of takes it to that level where I guess the comedy aspect of it is the fact that it's supposed to be kind of silly. But, I mean, there are bowling hustlers out there. There are people who are, taking money from people because of bowling and stuff. So it's a funny movie, but it's not so far off.
One of those things about Lynn Shay in that movie that I find so funny is that she's quite a lovely lady. She's very beautiful and usually always smiling and happy and just have one of those beautiful faces, and they make her look like a demon in this movie.
So she plays the landlord character for Roy, who he's always late on his rent, and so she's this kind of like not hideous but like not attractive lady. She's a smoker, she's got yellow teeth, like just ugh. But they portray her, basically Roy has to perform certain acts to basically get away with not paying his rent, and he's throwing up in a bucket and all that kind of stuff. It's hilarious. It's worth checking out if you haven't seen it. All three of these movies are worth checking out. They're all so freaking funny, and we love them all.
Yeah, look at Kingpin, like a guy like Woody Harrelson. He's also kind of almost a Mr. Everything Man in terms of his acting chops.
That's very true.
He's fantastic. Like he was in a series, True Detective. The first season was amazing.
Dramatic, yeah.
Matthew McConaughey were great duo together.
One of my favorite Woody Harrelson movies is actually Zombieland.
Yeah, Zombieland's amazing.
And the sequel too is actually really funny too. So yeah. Really enjoy his acting. He was great in Hunger Games too. Like just like Kelly said, you couldn't have picked probably for that type of movie that Kingpin was. You couldn't have picked a better ensemble. Agree. Yeah, I agree. Speaking of ensemble, gentlemen, I feel like we couldn't have picked a better ensemble for this show. The three of us.
Absolutely.
And the boys. And listen, if you guys have comments, suggestions, anything like that, please reach out to us on our social media. We are on X, formerly Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. And you can reach us on all those things, including YouTube, at ThePuckNPod, ThePuckNPod. And reach out to us. Let us know what you think of the show. Let us know if you have anything you want us to discuss. I'm sure we'd love to hear some suggestions. And that's That's pretty much it for this episode, gentlemen. How are we feeling?
Had a really good pucking show. Hope we get some more comments from our audience and keep going with the fun times ahead.
Looking forward to tomorrow. It's Friday. Looking forward to seeing some hockey over the weekend, seeing how camps are progressing and how players are looking. And
it's going to be exciting.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be exciting. Well, once again, for the Puck and Pod, my name is Joe.
I'm Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
We will see you guys in the next one.